Hello, my name's Claire Newcombe. Welcome to the Crafting with Lisa Horton YouTube channel. Today I want to show you how I went about making this card using Lisa's 3D embossing folders with the layering stencils. Now this particular set is the Buttercup Bloom. We have the Buttercup Bloom embossing folder. It's a square embossing folder and you have the coordinating die, and then in a separate set you have the layering stencils, and this particular set consists of 6 numbered stencils that layer to allow you to colour this beautiful image. So to create this card, it's a 6x6 square card, 6x6 inch I should say, or just short of 6x6 inch. I am using cardstock from Lisa's range. I'm using the beautiful textured linen cardstock, and I'm also using as a layer on the card blank the satin metallic, and I've used the black sheet there. Now you can see from this card that we actually have the inner circle with the coloured layering detail actually on a white piece of card that I've inserted. So I've used the yellow textured card and I've cut an aperture and reinserted it with a piece of white card. So I've taken myself a square of the lemon card. So when you take your embossing folder, then obviously on the inside you're going to have a debossed side and an embossed side. Now the side that you want facing up is the debossed side. So we put our card in with the facing upwards. We have the debossed side on the top here, and you can feel that just with your hand there, and you can feel that it's actually sort of recessed into the embossing folder. So that's how you know that this is the top side up. So I want to just position my card within the embossing folder like that. Then I want to take myself a circle die. Now I'm using a circle die from Lisa's Nested Scalloped and Plain Circle sets. If you don't have that particular set, Lisa has lots of other sets with circle dies in them that you could perhaps use. Maybe you might have the nested torn edge circles, and that would give a really nice effect on the outside. So I'm just taking myself a circle die, one that would actually enclose the flowers, which is what I want to highlight on this card. Now at this stage I'm just using the embossing folder as a guide, because initially I just want to cut myself an aperture within this cardstock, and I just want to check this is in the right place. So just placing the circle die on the inside, you can see that the blossoms or the blooms are within that within the circle die there. So keeping that die in place, I just want to take myself just a little bit of washi tape or a low tack tape that you like to use. I just want to make sure that I keep that in place, and now I can take this to the die cut machine and die cut my aperture. Okay, so if I can remove that die cut there. So we have the circle aperture. I have already pre-cut myself a piece of white linen card, again from Lisa's textured cardstock pack, and you can see that because we've used the same circle die that fits within there perfectly. So I just want to bring in Lisa's ULTI-MATE tool. The ULTI-MATE tool has the peg system at the top here, which corresponds to the holes here in the layering stencils, and what this allows you to do is to stencil with confidence, knowing that the stencil won't move around and neither will your project underneath. The silicone mat underneath provides a really good, I won't say sticky surface, but it provides resistance to any of the cardstock that you put underneath. So as I say, it allows you to stencil with confidence, knowing that your project won't shift beneath the stencil. So if we bring in our layering stencils, I just want to bring in or keep the both pieces of cardstock here just at the moment, just while I line up the design on the cardstock. And to do that, I'm just flicking through the stencils until I find the one that actually incorporates all the leaves. And I'm just going to use that just to line up and make sure that the whole design is going to fit on my cardstock underneath. And I'm just going to then hold the cardstock beneath the stencil and just shift the whole lot into place onto the pegs there. That way I know that the embossing folder and the cardstock and the designs within the aperture are all going to line up. So if you just take a little bit of time just to make sure that that all lines up, then it will just be worth that in the long run. If I actually take that away for a second, we don't need that. So we can see there, I'll just move that along a little. You can see there where the flowers are going to be is actually sitting within the aperture that you can still see below or underneath the stencil. So once you're happy with that, then you can remove the stencil. Replace your aperture and then remove the outside, because I don't actually want any ink to go on the outside here. So once you've placed the largest of the stencils, which in this case was number 3 with the leaves, put this back in sequence with the rest of your stencils, so when you don't misplace it and it just keeps everything in order. And I don't know if the camera can actually pick up here. Yes, there we are. You can actually see that the numbers are stenciled, so you know what order to use them in. There we are. So not touching the circle die there, that's staying put nicely because of this silicone mat. I'm just going to carefully place stencil number 1 over the top, and you can see we have the outline of the flowers. Now this is going to be the lightest of the layers. I'm using distress inks for these. I like the way that they lay down the colour. So I'm using squeezed lemonade. I should be using mustard seed for the darker colour and a little bit of black soot just for the centres of the flowers. But I'm going to start off with my squeezed lemonade. I'm using also Lisa's blending brushes. And we take a generous amount of ink onto the brush and we just start to lightly lay down that colour in the background. So we just work that colour in. Now, as you can see, I'm actually stenciling onto the linen cardstock, which creates a beautiful texture. You can, of course, use Lisa's super smooth cardstock. That works just as well, but I think this textured card, particularly the white, gives us a really nice finish and a really nice texture. So I don't want too much ink on at that stage. You can see that when I take away stencil number 1, that we have the beginnings of our buttercup image there. And I'm only doing the flowers. So we lay down number 2. This lays down the second colour on top of just the blooms, and I can go in with my darker ink, which is the mustard seed, again with the same blending brush because it's tone on tone. And I can gently lay down the ink and start building up that colour so we have our pretty buttercup blooms. So there's no need to press hard. It's always better to come in with little bits of ink and slowly and gradually build up that colour to the intensity that suits you. Say this is completely individual, and you make the cards to your liking. So we can carry on building that ink. Now I'm going to bear in mind the colour of the background card that I'm actually using, this lemon card. So I'm going to stop when I think the colour that I've laid down complements that cardstock really well. So I'm quite happy with the way that is. So I shall move away stencil 2. You can see that already just using 2 stencils that how pretty these layering stencils are. The next stencil in the set, number 3, is gives us the leaves, but I don't want to actually stencil that, so I'm going to bypass that stencil. I'm going to instead come to stencil 4, which, if you can see here, just has the centre of the flowers in, so I shall place that down. This is where I can come in with the black soot, and I can use a smaller blending brush and just take a little bit of the black ink and just work that through the stencil. Don't ever be afraid of using black, because I think when you use black it can really make the other colours in your project pop, especially when you use it sparingly like this. So we'll just work that in. And you can see all I'm doing now is just taking the excess ink from the stencil and just working that into those areas. There's no need to waste the ink, so instead of washing it off we might as well use the brush to actually push that through into the design. Now what I can do is carefully take that stencil away, and we can see that that's left us just with beautiful buttercup blooms there, and that is all that I wanted. I only want to highlight those blooms at this stage for this particular design. And what we can do, we can replace our stenciled circle there back within its aperture, and now we can bring in again our embossing folder. So we can replace our embossing folder in the way that we positioned before, so we have that centrally within the folder. We just check that we have that the right way round, so we actually have the embossed side facing upwards. Now what I want to do now, and the important thing, is to match up these flowers with the design on the outside of the folder. So just take a minute or two. I mean, it is easy to figure. So we have those placed. We have the flowers matching up with the embossed detail. We just make sure we keep that in place, and we just now readjust the lemon cardstock just so the aperture sits nicely within that. And as we close that down, we should see that the flowers match up with our stencil design on the inside. And now with those 2 layers together, we can take this to the die cutting machine and emboss. So having run this through the die cutting machine, we can reveal, and this bit is always exciting, we can see the beautiful embossing, and you can see now how those flowers have just been picked out with the stenciling that you've done beforehand, leaving the rest of the embossing unstenciled but just as beautiful. And all that leaves us to do now is to mat and layer that onto our black cardstock, which I think just really highlights, because the black will match the centre of the flowers there. It really makes those flowers pop. So I'm using Lisa's high-tech craft glue. This is a fabulous glue. It's the glue that I will always go to now. The dispenser is as good as the glue, to be honest, which to me is just as important. It gives a really fine, it dispenses the glue really finely. So we can put that down. You could, if you wanted to, just create a little bit more dimension. You could actually use foam pads on the back of the aperture here just to raise that up a little bit. But I actually like to have this flat. So we can use a little bit more glue. We can just add that. Now what we do want to make sure we do is just match up the embossing when we replace that aperture, just to make the design flow as it should. I think just as it is, laying that aperture in flat allows the embossing to really talk for itself, and those flowers look even more 3D than they actually are. And I'm using a black VersaFine, the Onyx Black, because I know this gives a beautiful impression. And I'm just going to initially just ink up the first word, birthday. And I'm going to stamp that straight onto the card. Now if you wanted to do this and you don't have the confidence of stamping straight onto the card, you can of course use your ULTI-MATE tool, because that is essentially a stamping platform, and it will allow you to have the confidence to know that you'll be placing the stamp in exactly the place that you want it to be. So I've stamped the birthday. Now the key to this is to make sure that the stamp is clean before we go in again. So I just make sure I clean that. All I'm using is just water and a microfiber cloth, and just making sure that that is clean and dry. Then what we need to do next is just to ink up the second word, wishes. Now I'm using a small ink pad, which allows me a lot of control when I'm inking the stamp. If you have a bigger ink pad, so you can just use a piece of rough paper just to cover up this piece of the stamp that you don't want to use, and just use your ink pad like so. Then we can come in again and stamp our second word. And we have our finished card. Thanks for watching the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy using Lisa Horton's products, then do subscribe to our channel so you can keep up to date with all the videos that myself and the design team and Lisa do post. Don't forget that we have our community on Facebook, the Lisa Horton Crafting with Lisa Horton group, where Lisa herself and the rest of the design team are always present to look at what you've been making, and we're always on hand to answer any questions. Thanks so much for joining me today. I also used the same technique on the original card, but stamped happy birthday instead. Thanks so much for watching the video today. Remember, if you do enjoy using Lisa's products, then do subscribe to our YouTube channel called Crafting with Lisa Horton. The design team and Lisa herself regularly post new videos on there. Also, we have our community on Facebook, the Crafting with Lisa Horton community, where Lisa, myself and the rest of the design team are on hand to answer questions and also look at all the fabulous projects that you're creating yourselves. Thanks for watching.